the Daniel Cleland podcast.
All right. Mr. Wade Lightheart, a new friendly face, meeting for the first time today, connected by some mutual friends. A few mutual friends in the circle, Mr. Kyle Kingsbury and...
Right on.
Yeah. So, ladies and gentlemen, Wade Lightheart is an advisor to the American Anti-Cancer Institute, certified sports nutritionist, a three-time All Natural National Bodybuilding Champion, former Mr. Universe competitor. Were you also in Mr. Olympia as well, competing?
The natural one, not the full-on.
Okay. Founder of BiOptimizers, a supplements company that you've probably heard of, sponsors many popular podcasts, and author of the book, Staying Alive in a Toxic World. And Lord knows this world has become a lot more toxic in the past couple of years, if not just for people's basic health habits, but for the psychological health and well-being of most of our population, right?
Big time.
How has your experience in the past 18 months been?
Well, I think of Charles Dickens' classic, The Tale of Two Cities. It's the best of times and the worst of times. And so I think far as BiOptimizers and our business and our reach and our ability to help people go from sick to superhuman has expanded exponentially during this time. We've been very successful and got more friends and more partners and more products. And that's been just fantastic. Yet my soul is deeply troubled because of what has happened to freedom, essentially, the freedom of thought, the how everything has been politicized, censorship, specifically. I think the things that has allowed the Western world to expand and to grow and to develop and create the opportunities and values that have literally transformed the entire globe more than any other system are now under attack from a variety of institutions and I would say bad actors who are interested in ushering a more totalitarian regime for whatever reason that they feel that is superior. And it's put us on, us on the kind of those of us who are maybe a little more contrarian in our approach to life about, internal health and personal responsibility and self-development and freedom of speech and entrepreneurship and health freedoms and these type of things. For us, who are in the minority in a certain aspect, we're right in the gun sights, I think, of these institutions because we're the last bulwark between absolute authoritarianism. And that's a difficult position to be in. However, I'm an internal optimist. And I think that on a grander scale, what's happened is humanity has now become the evolutionary pressure to create a mutation into a new species. So whether that's going to be Homo digitalis, Homo geneticus, Homo spiritus, Homo unitus, I think it's over for Homo sapiens. And there's going to be a variety of experiments that happen, which are already well underway. And there's going to be the emergence of new species, and some of those species are going to survive and some of them aren't.
Wow, that's an interesting take. So you're Canadian. I'm also Canadian. I grew up in Canada, and both of us.
What part?
Well, that's what I wanted to ask you as well. I grew up in a small town in Ontario called Walkerton, Ontario.
Okay.
So I listened to your podcast with Kingsbury, and I heard you talking about how you grew up in a rural community, blue collar, a lot of hunting and fishing and stuff like that. And I'm certain we had a very similar upbringing, but both of us grew up and went and kind of went around the world and did our things and started our businesses and basically picked and chose what we wanted out of life, picked and chose where we wanted to live and all that kind of stuff. So I have a couple questions about your upbringing in Canada, and then kind of what spawned you to go out in the world, and also what your thoughts are on the subject we just discussed, but in the context of Canada, because I have some thoughts there too.
Yeah.
Actually, let's start there because you're now living in LA and California has been almost in the same line as Canada on the extreme side of things when it came to like lockdowns and control and censorship and all that kind of stuff. I haven't been back to Canada in 2 years. I found it very frustrating and almost heartbreaking to see how controlling and dominating and just restrictive things got there from the governmental perspective and censorship and all that kind of stuff. What are your thoughts on all that?
Canada is not a it's not an absolute democracy. It's a socialist system that has taken the next step into totalitarianism of a more Marxist quality. And the citizens of the country have forgotten that the government is the representatives of the people, not the dictators to the people. And that is largely in part because of a digital propaganda campaign by special interest groups who have literally profited from the lockdown of the citizens, the taking away of their rights, and the funneling of both information and economics through very specific channels that allowed certain individuals and organizations to control the narrative, as well to profit from the collective ignorance of the population and their genuine sense of naive goodness. I think the average citizen in Canada is generally a good person that thinks the best of things and can't possibly comprehend how tyrannical the country has come, and they're playing a game of, well, this can't go on forever. Well, no, it can. It can go on forever, and it has gone on forever in a lot of other countries. So that naive ignorance of the world and I think the malevolent intent of individuals who are in positions of power is significant. And the divide and conquer rule through censorship and disinformation and now social shaming for personal health freedoms is lockstep to exactly what Alexander Solzhenitsyn wrote about in the Gulag Archipelago. It's a replay of the Maoist revolution that took the Chinese people and all the cultural evolutionary hill against Lao Beijing, the old 100 names in China, when that happened. And we're seeing this. We saw this. People aren't talking about what happened to Hong Kong. That was taken over, former democratic rule, which had a beautiful fusion of Western legal systems with, I would say, traditional Chinese family work ethic. Hong Kong being one of the most successful turnarounds in the history of the world in a very short period of time when you marry those two things. And, people have become comfortably numb. They've been hypnotized by video and hypnotized by propaganda. And now they're playing a game of, well, I don't want to lose this next thing. But at the end of the day, when I flew in to see my family at Christmas time to a rural town called Moncton, New Brunswick, which I'm 20 miles outside of an even more rural little village, I was subjected to having devices implanted onto my phone. I was met at the airport with guys wearing camouflage outfits with guns and bulletproof vests. I was forced into home arrest, which they call a quarantine. And the police came to my house in this little tiny village in rural New Brunswick, Canada, to ensure that I was actually where I was set to be. And so if you look at the actual statistics around the pandemic response and the risk that was presented to me, you have about the same risk of getting hit by lightning. And so this is a hyperbole response to of questionable origins. And the solution, if you watch, makes absolutely no sense. The solution, if you look at what's happened from a government response system and you match that with what virologists say, if you match this with what economists say, if you match this to statistical probability and what the leading think tank people are saying, who are being censored, you have to go through alternative channels. Then you look at this, there's a deeper, sicker thing that's going on. And I believe that Canada has fallen. And one of the things I'm in the United States is because I think the last hope for the world lies within the United States of America.
Wow, that's a bold statement. Even in California, where some would say it has become somewhat lost in the direction of socialism.
Well, there are pockets within California, for example, if you take Orange County, I think has been far more resistant than LA County, which I find. So I have a great group of people that I work with in Orange County, and they've been much more liberated in their actions and how they engage. I'm right here in the front lines. I believe that some people are better off to be the eye in the sky and show air support. And then some knuckleheads like me need to be on the ground and be on the boots on the ground. And I'm a boots on the ground kind of guy. Let's get into it. Let's get at it. I've got a great compound here in Venice. I got a 4-story place. I got a gym in my house. I got my own food. I got everything I need, but I'm here standing as a beacon to put up resistance. Yeah, absolutely. Hey, you know what? It's my body, my choice. I don't have to follow those programs. The science doesn't make sense. Don't tell me about follow the science. Tyranny is tyranny. I don't care what you call it. And, Mafiesco offers are always, hey, do what we said so for your protection. When anybody says, hey, we're here to protect you, run. Because chances are they're there to protect some other interest that has nothing to do with you. And I think anybody with a little bit of historical aspect can recognize that.
There's a lot of people that would hear us talking and just say, oh, just another couple of, privileged white males or whatever, but I tend to agree with you that in a lot of ways, there's this massive transformation going on right now where oppression is coming in many ways. It's coming in many ways. And some of them are ideological. Some of them are physical, like what you just described in your experience in Canada. But other ones are coming from shaming and coming from ganging up on the internet and coming from cancel culture and stuff like that. I'll use an example that has been hitting me this week. I've been a little bit outspoken on social media about, some of my resistances to some of the pressures that have been coming down from that more ideological pressure and that social pressure side of things. And like, I've literally been the same guy for, the last 10 years, but now all of a sudden society has shifted. So that guy has, become a racist or become a sexist or become a privileged white male or whatever, because that's what, the goalposts have shifted. And all of a sudden I feel this additional pressure. So I have been kind of outspoken in resistance to that on social media. And that actually has resulted in potential investors in a new project, like basically reaching out and saying like, oh, we don't like what you posted online and we're potentially thinking about pulling funds from this new project because of that. So that is just one example, real world example of like, okay, there's a lot of pressure from a lot of sides on really, and I haven't said anything like, I haven't actually said anything, let's call it, like wrong. I've been
inflammatory that would fan the flames of the current conversation, right?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I'll say something a little bit controversial only because I feel the pressure to conform, and I just hate that pressure to conform. So it's like, I'll throw a hashtag in there and be like, oh, just to, just to kind of piss
Right.
people off a little bit, right? Because I've always hated being pressured into conforming into the mainstream. But yeah, I mean, there's that pressure from so many sides to really fit the narrative, and whether that's coming from the internet, from social media, or from people in various different ways economically choking other people. Like, for example, Chinese choking out uh, people like in the NBA or movie stars if they say the wrong thing, then they're not allowed in the Chinese market, or people boycotting companies if they don't say the right thing, and then so the companies responding by setting rules or boycotting other things to fit into a narrative. It seems like there's just a lot of oppressive forces forming that are changing the dynamic of society. And then you see the resistance being mainly in the United States or in countercultural pockets around the world. There are countercultural pockets in Canada that I'm aware of, in Europe, and
France, Germany, Australia. I've seen these movements, which are going largely unreported in social media.
Yeah, unless they get, unless they have a protest in the streets, and even that maybe not covered in the same way that it might be if it was a protest for some other type of movement. Tough times. So what actually brought you into to desire leaving the place you grew up? You grew up in Canada, you had the upbringing in Canada, and then what made you want to go and put a dent in the world?
Great question. And I think Canada, for the most part, has traditionally been an extraordinary country to live in. Only recently has it made a dire turn in its direction, and hopefully that will revert sometime in the future. But I grew up in rural Canada, playing hockey, doing all the rest of the things. But what happened is my sister, when I was 15, we moved to the middle of the woods, 5 miles to my nearest neighbor. She was diagnosed with Hodgkin's disease, which is cancer of the lymph nodes. And I watched her go through the medical model for 4 years before she died at the age of 22. And that had a massive impact on me. First off, I knew that my health wasn't a guarantee, or your life wasn't a guarantee, right? The next piece of that was, I remember she was going through the treatments, and the treatments seemed to be making her sicker. And I thought, well, why? And my naive way was, well, why is the treatments seem to be worse than the disease? And so it made me distrustful of what was being told to us. And it was all hidden behind medical jargon and reasons and stuff like that. And so I thought I'd better go figure out a better way. So I got into training. I thought if I had muscles and lifted weights, I'd be healthier. I went to university, studied exercise physiology. And when I was 22, I'd left university, and I was just talking about this a few minutes ago to a friend of mine. And I remember I was working in a furniture store 60 hours a week selling furniture. And I hated the job. I wasn't able to train as much as I want. I'm in the same town, the university town that I grew up. And I was like, and I woke up one morning, and I woke out of my bed, and I looked down my hallway. I could look down my hallway and into the living room. And I was like, it was like this tunnel vision. And I said, I've become everything that I said I wasn't going to be. And it was like I could see the next 50 years of my life just clearly. It was like everybody else I knew. And I thought back to my sister. And, when my sister was dying on her deathbed and stuff, I remember looking out the window with her and thinking, what would she give for another day? What would she give for an opportunity to feel good or go out and do the things I want? And I vowed at that time that I would always try the new thing or go take a chance or go take a shot, because what's the worst thing that can happen? I fail. And I did. I had read Think and Grow Rich, and there was a story about Barnes, who was a railway bum who got on a train and met Thomas Edison and tried to get in business with him. And he took a job as a janitor. And for 5 years, he worked there. And then when the dictaphone came out, none of the salespeople wanted it. And he took that on, and it became one of the best-selling products for Edison. He became successful, and he reached his goal of being in business with Edison and went on to a great career. And I said, I need to do that. I need to burn the bridges. So I sold everything I had and got on a plane. My first plane ride, went to the West Coast, took a bus across the border to Seattle, took a train from Seattle to Los Angeles, came here, met Joe Gold, was training at World Gym at the time. He was running World Gym at the time. And after a couple of weeks, he said, hey, man, do you got any friends down here? I'm like, no. You got any money down here? I'm like, no. Do you got any, you got any family? I'm like, no. He's like, well, listen, this city's going to eat you up. You don't need to be here to be a bodybuilding champion. You could be back in Canada. Go back, make some money, get a business, get some things, and then come down periodically. So I took his advice, went back to Vancouver, and started my career in the health field, working in gyms and nutrition stores, and working my career as a bodybuilder. And eventually, after tremendous amounts of failure, nonstop failure for year after year after year, I was able to find some success later on, and things started to turn around.
So what do you say? Because this is like one of my pet peeves, man. Like, what do you say when people look at you and your success and they just say, like, privilege? Like, you're just a white privileged male because you're successful. And what do you say after you're knowing about how many struggles you went through to actually get to that first base, and how many times you failed before you even got a whiff of success?
Well, first off, I acknowledge that I was fortunate enough to be born in a country of Canada. I had two parents, two-parent home. I wasn't beaten. I wasn't abused. I wasn't under any dysfunction. So I say, yeah, I did have some privileges. Absolutely. I was given those opportunities, which isn't available to a lot of people in the world. And I happened to be in that country. And here's what I did with them. I didn't rest on it. I just didn't, coast. I worked on my own ignorances, which I still have many. I took the hard school lessons. I spent time in bettering myself. I traveled and lived in cultures that have different ways of doing things, and exposed myself to, philosophical ideas, different, urban situations and rural situations. And I went out and traveled the world and got a real experience, not something that I heard on a YouTube meme that got propagated around, or through some university special interest groups that people haven't been anywhere or done anything. I did all those things. And I can say that I've done the very best I can with what I've been given. Am I perfect? No. Do I have everything right? No. Did I achieve all the successes I wanted? Not yet. But I'm doing the best I can, and I'm making the world a better place. And I provide opportunities for everyone who comes into my business and my field to better themselves and to learn from me and excel beyond me if possible. And whether that's within my company or without. And I've made my passion and my philosophy that. And, my parents taught me something when I was a kid. Sticks and stones will break my bones, but names will never hurt me. I'm not concerned about my social media presence. In fact, I just took it all off my phone recently because it's just a waste of time for the most part. And concentrate on real world connections. I know who I am and what my character is. What is projected onto me, I can't necessarily control. I can't control what somebody thinks of me. I can't control if they think I'm privileged. I can't control, nor do I feel a need to defend myself, because maybe they're right. I don't know. I can't change that even if it was. What I can do is go out there and make the world a better place. And I'm very confident that I've done that, and I will continue to do so, whatever the public whatever the controlled public narrative is, because I don't think it's as public. I don't think the narrative is as popular as it's perceived because of the way narratives are throttled or expanded in this media. And if people study the art of war, they will see that we are losing a war that we don't know that we're in.
Is it just one side that doesn't know they're in that war, or is it both sides?
I believe so. I believe that the Western world has succumbed to comfort to such a level that it has become ignorant of the outside pressures or the living conditions of other places in the world and the philosophies that go with them. And I don't condemn any other organization or any other group. It's not my business. But if you haven't been anywhere and you haven't been to these places, you haven't seen how it's going on or talked to the people or become friends with people, you don't know. But when you've traveled to China and you've traveled to India and you've been into different parts of Europe and the feudal systems and throughout Latin America, and you've studied history and you look at things, and the picture becomes very crystal clear. And usually when someone condemns us, first off, two of my biggest heroes are Martin Luther King and Gandhi. And they would be appalled by the social justice warriors and what they're projecting out onto other people. You cannot judge. Martin Luther King says, I have a dream that one day that people will be judged by the content of their character, not the color of their skin. Well, that doesn't apply to one color skin. It applies to everybody's. And the amount of melanin that I have within my skin is of no, or anyone else, has nothing to do with the judgment of things. And anybody that wants to argue that is, it's so backwards. It's, come on, this is 2021. It doesn't matter what color your skin is. It really doesn't. It's like arguing you can only have blue paint on your car. Like, what's wrong with red paint or black paint? It doesn't matter. It's a paint job on the car. It's the same car underneath, and so it is for everyone else.
Do you have any thoughts on how much of a part your work ethic, your risk taking, your imagination, your willingness to get out amongst the world and learn new things, how much of that versus how much of being born in the right place with a stable family was responsible for where you are today?
Great question. I think it's really hard to accurately assess that, because I think when you're dealing with different types of psychologies, some people under extreme conditions rise to the top. If you look at, say, a guy like Francis Ngannou, who is the UFC heavyweight champion of the world, I could not think of a more underprivileged, difficult set of circumstances that anyone could grow up in and rose to the top of the world. So something within that environment forged him into the champion he is today. So I think it would be a little bit of Monday morning quarterback to say it was this much or this much. What I can say, I'm a tar paper shack Canadian. I came from what in Canada is the lower end of the spectrum. And I've been able to rise up through that and carry other people onwards within my endeavors. And I've made lots of errors in it. I've done all sorts of things that I've had to reflect upon and correct. And I think everybody makes mistakes. And I choose to think that the people that are even suggesting that my life is based on white privilege or whatever, okay, well, they're entitled to their opinion. Maybe it is. I don't know. I can't control that factor. All I can control is my own self-growth. I'm not here to blame anybody, and I'm not here to pat anybody else. What I can say, this argument was very similar in the Bolshevik Revolution, which was a Marxist ideology that infected Russia, which then became the Soviet Union, and it was in the proletariat and the bourgeoisie, and it resulted in somewhere between 30 and 50 million deaths because they just killed all the competent people, particularly in the Ukraine and the starvation components. And they started out of the universities by hooking the intellectuals on this utopian idea. And I'm more of a Hindu in my philosophy, and Hindu believes in a thing called karma. And in karma, the suggestion is that you're reincarnated into the environment and situation that is perfect for your psychological and spiritual development, whatever that is. Now, whether that's true or not, I can't say with absolute certainty. I believe it to be true, and I operate from that. And so what I say is, whatever circumstances that I'm born into, I take full responsibility for those. And I own those, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I make the best of it. And the best of it is to hold to the highest principles I possibly can of self-development, personal responsibility, personal growth, learning from my mistakes, courage, taking chances, learning from those inevitable mistakes, and putting forth what you feel is a dharmic principle of doing good in the world to the best of your capabilities. And for some people, that might be being a janitor at the local church and keeping that church in great place. And for other people, it might be leading, a soon-to-be Fortune 500 company like I am, and using that in a tool to uplift people and create opportunities for people, as opposed to, question whether I'm worthy or I'm doing wrong or what those things. Those conversations, I'll let the world judge me on those, and that they're fine for that.
What do you say to people who adopt a victimhood mindset, who categorize themselves or others based on those factors, like,
Yes.
In a way that is, in a way that is like almost resignation from,
Yes.
well, I was born this way, so I can't do this. And then there's a resentment for other people who were born a different way if they happen to be doing things differently, like this kind of victim mentality. What would you say to people like that?
Well, I grew up in an environment very much like that. So I can relate to a certain level of like, well, this is the way things are. And this is, it's kind of, there was a resignation to what you could get to. And anyone who climbs out of it was questioned and threatened and thought of as different, or you were castigated if you're in a rural community, decided you want to be a business person, or you wanted to go take a new course, or started early in my life when I wanted to play on the provincial team, not the local hockey team. And so I was, quote unquote, excommunicated from my friends groups because
Too good for everybody.
You're big time. Yeah. You think you're big time, you're going to the big city, right? And for whatever reason, I was the kind of person that just fueled me, right? And to give you an example, to illustrate this point, I recognized quite early in life that a victim mentality was not going to get me anywhere. And I got into personal development, and they identified the psychology and energy of a victim mentality. It's not that there isn't victims. There are. Being a victim is something that is going to happen to everybody on some aspect of life. And there's a variance of it. Obviously, being a victim of political or religious or gender violence for some reason, and the damage that is some of the most significant that can happen to people, and it's happening all over the world. And I have empathy and compassion for that, and for those who have had that, that's probably the worst. So I can't speak to that because that didn't necessarily happen to me. I did have excommunications from groups and projected things that I didn't feel were true at the time, or certainly moved out of social groups, which was hurtful at the time. But I was like, okay, fine. So I'm out of that social group. Well, I'll find a group that I do fit in. I'll go to the next one, and I don't need those people anyways. And it is very systematic. Pick up your cross and carry it as a Christian tradition. which my mother instilled in me. Of course you're going to get named, and of course you're going to get attacked, and of course people aren't going to understand. Sometimes the people closest to you. But to cave into that guarantees the outcome. Yeah. I stay a victim. I don't rise up. I don't change my circumstances. I don't help anybody. So as dire as those conditions are, I would prefer to resist them to the best of my ability and climb above them to the best I can. And the most inspirational, and to how to do that, as I read inspirational stories of people that did it, the story of Martin Luther King, the story of Mahatma Gandhi, the story of Muhammad Ali, and how he rose, how Arnold Schwarzenegger came from humble beginnings. And I began to study people, Charles Givens and Napoleon Hill and Tony Robbins and, Yogananda as my spiritual teacher, people that came out of very difficult situations that rose up and made a giant positive impact in the world. And so I began to associate, at least in my mind, with those people because I had no real examples around me. And I think in today's world, we do have those opportunities. So what you focus on is what you get. And so if you focus on all that's wrong, if you focus on being a victim, you're probably right. But that doesn't get you anywhere.
Right.
And so it might be right, but let's just accept what is and then take ownership of the things, the tiniest thing that I can do. And when I started, the only thing that I could do to change my life was to go out into my barn and lift weights, because I could see that I could make little tiny changes in myself. And that anchored a process of consistency over time equals results. And that's been the formula for success ever since.
I really could not agree more, man. And, I believe so strongly that results are based on action over time. And prowess comes with practice. And I see this uprising and this wave of this worshiping of like the victim mentality in this culture, man. And it concerns me because it goes against everything that I believe and everything I teach in my own methodologies for entrepreneurship is like, even if the worst thing in the world happened to you, like you said, you're not serving yourself if you dwell on that and just if you become the person who that happened to. Like that's your identity, is you're the person who that thing happened to, or you're the person who was, whatever, man. There's lots of things that every single person on earth can identify with as, like you said, victimization happens to everybody in one way, shape, or form. And if that's how you identify who you are with, then it's not going to solve any problems in your life. It's going to keep you in that spot. Whereas if you accept, and then from whatever point you are, there's a way to move up to some direction that is desirable, to some destination that is desirable, if you put effort and time and practice into where you want to go, So it just, that's why I like talking to guys like you who have cultivated results in their life by having a philosophy, by having a methodology that you can share with people and inspire other people. Let's I've got a bunch of questions, but I've got a ferry that I've got to catch in 45 minutes. I'd like to learn more about BiOptimizers and some of, like, let's say take like 15 minutes and talk about your top health advice from all your experience at BiOptimizers. What is BiOptimizers? What are you guys doing? And how can you help listeners?
Yeah, so BiOptimizers was co-founded by myself and Matt Gallant, two personal trainers and fitness enthusiasts and nutritionists who grew up literally on the opposite sides of the river in New Brunswick. He grew up in the French area. I grew up in the English area, which was a divisive area. He's 5 years younger than me, digitally savvy. I'm more interpersonal. And after I came back from the Mr. Universe, what had happened is I had helped him move to Vancouver, and we were both personal trainers out there. He was a good marketer, and I was just kind of good at what I did. I was a word of mouth guy. And after I got back from the universe, he said, "Hey, we could sell a course online to help other people. I'm making money online." I'm like, "Nobody's making money online. What are you talking about?" He's like,
What
"No,
year was that in?
2004.
Okay, so just when things were starting to get kicked off and that
Yeah.
kind of thing. Okay.
Yeah. And so he's one of the original OGs. And I said, "Well, I can write the training course and the book. If you can market it, let's do it." So we made a handshake. I didn't have a computer. I was using an internet cafe, if you can believe that. We wrote our first product and released it, and came out of the gate successes. And we just kept building from there with a passion to help other people avoid some of the mistakes and to take advantage. And that was the origination of BiOptimizers. Back then, it started out coaching bodybuilders. We had a product called Freaky Big Naturally. And shortly afterwards, we came out with Masszymes, our first enzymatic component, because that was a key element for my physical success that I figured out. And long story short, over the years, that evolved into what we call BiOptimizers, which is a biological optimization company helping people. Our goal is to help people live healthily to 100 and beyond. So not just extending lifespan, but extending the healthy lifespan of people by a set of practices and principles. I created what's called an awesome health philosophy. We give it away on our website. It's a course, my 30 plus years in the industry, 5 to 15-minute videos, 12-week courses, just all the foundational aspect, air, water, exercise, sunlight, what optimizes your body, mental beliefs, attitudes, education, testing, an entire synchronized system so people can know where to allot their money. Basically everything that I needed when I started out and had to figure out over 30 years, you can download and get, and you can watch it in a weekend, and learn it all. And then you know where to put your resources. And we don't get to supplements the way down that. But one of the areas that I struggled with after the Mr. Universe was digestive health. And so we built the world's best digestive health suite. And that was way ahead of the time. No one was talking about enzymes and probiotics, but it caught fire in the bodybuilding community because they eat so much and have digestive issues. It got some traction and kept going, and then started to spread out into the biohacking community, and then high performance executives. And over the last 5 years, the company's exploded in growth. And from there, we went into the nervous system, and now recently into cognitive enhancers with another brand of ours called Newtopia, which is the first customized nootropic offerings to the general public. And so we have 9 different nootropics, which are taken in different combinations to the variants of each people's individual brain chemistry. And then our chemists retweak that to dial in the specifics for each person, because everybody's brain chemistry is a little different. And it's been a runaway success as well. And of course, we've just recently released a new book called The Blueprint for Biological Optimization from Sick to Superhuman. And we address 3 things: aesthetics, performance, and health, which is our triangle. The areas that people get excited about, and that changes from season to season, and how to activate the one that's most important to you without losing sight of the other things, because it's very easy to get into a performance model and sacrifice your health. It's easy to be all focused on health, but lose performance in the world. And our idea is to balance all 3 aspects: aesthetics, health, and performance. And we've got a great team, and we've been known because we give 100% guarantee on all our products. People try it, they don't like it, we give it their money back. We even pay for the shipping. We're very heavy on education, teaching people what to do. We don't believe in just randomly shotgunning supplements in your life. We think that you need to have the lifestyle principles. That's why I give away the courses for free, so that people can get the foundation and get the most out of the supplements that they are taking to augment their dietary choices. We're dietary agnostic, and we're releasing a big book on this next year, I think, which is going to transform the industry. We're in a bidding war with some publishing houses, which is pretty exciting. So
you're already working on your next book. That's That's impressive.
Yeah, I think I've written about 10 now. I think this one we're on now is number 10. I think 10 or 11. I can't remember anymore. So once you write a book, then you realize it's incomplete, it's outdated. And you're going to be judged on it. And you learn something new, and you have to write another book.
Yeah. I'm working on my second right now. Actually, I'm almost to publish, almost to market right now. We're just kind of tweaking the final manuscript a little bit, working with the publisher, going through cover designs and stuff like that right now. So yeah, and I'm already getting ideas for the third book. It must be like it's kind of an addictive process in a way.
It is. It is. It's well, I think the beauty of writing a book is it helps refines one's thoughts or experiences, and then converts that into concise thoughts, and then ultimately into principles. The unfortunate side of it, when you get done, you expose the gaps within that, and then you need to write another book and further refine them. And so, if you that's the interesting part. So I think that writing is a lost art, and I think it's a good practice to actually really look about what parts don't I get, and it starts to make you a little bit more humble.
Do you have any any practices or strategies or habits that you use for working on books, for writing books?
I do. So typically, what happens is I usually like to partner with somebody on books. Although I've got another one that's in the works. I've got two other ones in the works that I'm going to go at one day. But the process is simple. I'll sit down and we'll decide what it is that we want to address specifically, and why we want to address it. So what is the reason behind the book, and who is the book for? Okay, and do I have some value to offer that person because there's a perceived cognitive problem in the consciousness of the world? Okay, so for example, right now people are into biohacking, right? And I'm friends with all the top biohackers, and I'm in that world as well. However, I feel that why we called our company Biological Optimization, or the blueprint for that, was that hacking seems to be short circuiting a system, where it's like, what is the foundational principles that you're optimizing your life? So a hack might get you a short term result, but may have long term repercussions and consequences. So what I wanted is to build a sustainable system. So we'll go through that. We'll sit down and what are the most important first principles? And then what is the application of those, and how do those work? And what is the references that support that? So we'll break out the outline to the best of our ability. And then I'll get a professional writer to interview myself, and if I'm co-authoring the book, we'll get an interview, someone who can write and organize, and so we'll have them ask the questions around the bullet points. And so by free flowing that way, you get basically a data dump, and then the writer is going to organize how we communicated that, because I'm a verbal communicator. And so as they bring that back to us, now we look at that and we say, okay, let's begin the refinement of that generalized think into a logical, sequential way that we can communicate an idea, a system, a value, a principle. So when someone walks away from it, they say, I can take action or integrate this into my life. It's not just a bunch of gobbledygook all over the page.
Right on. Yeah, the last couple of books I've worked on, I've also worked with co-authors, and I find it a lot easier, especially for someone who's running a company and like busy as all hell, and
Yeah.
you've got the info, but getting it out and organizing it and presenting it in a digestible book format is, some people are better at doing that than others, and more efficient. And if you partner up with one of those people, then it's really just about the content that's coming out of it, that's coming out of you, that's getting organized. Right. Okay, man. Well, you've got to come down to Soltara sometime.
Love to. Matt's down in Panama. My business partner is just a hop, skip, and a jump over there. So hopefully things will open up soon, and we'll be back to traveling again.
When was the last time you did ayahuasca?
We're looking at 3 or 4 years ago. Was my last one, and I was actually contemplating the rise and fall of ideologies throughout the world and through civilizations, and that experience basically took me. It's taken me 3 years to continually unpack. It's a tremendous introspective device if used in the right environment, in the right placing, with the right intention. And that's how I've leveraged that technology. I think it's great for that. And so I do it here and there when I feel the calling, but I'm not like an every weekender kind of guy.
Cool. Well, next time you get the call, feel free to hit me up, and you can come down and have a session down in Costa Rica.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
All right, bro. Thank you so much for making the time. It was nice to meet you. And yeah, I'm sure we'll cross paths at some point in the future. Good luck with your company going to Fortune 500, man.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it, and always a pleasure. And love the questions, and I like the departure from the normal conversation because I think it's really important. So I appreciate your honesty and you going after the difficult topics that a lot of people don't want to talk about today.
Well, hopefully it doesn't get me banned from the internet.
Maybe that's the best thing to happen to us if we get banned. I don't know. Who knows?
All righty.
Take care.
Thank you, sir.
The Daniel Cleland Podcast.
Thank you so much, my friends, for checking out the Daniel Cleland Podcast. We love you and appreciate you. If you liked what you saw, please like, subscribe, share it up with your friends and loved ones who might benefit from these episodes. And if you'd like to check out more episodes, we've got some links conveniently placed over there. So check it out, share it up. And until next time, be well. Much love to you. Thank you so much.